All right, welcome everyone. That sound marks the end of yet another trading session on Wall Street. Let's take a look and see how the Dow is doing right now. We're pretty much flat. We've been around this territory all day. We are down 48 points or so. Got to mention that August is a bit of a quiet month. It is a very much a sort of a nothing to see here kind of day in terms of what is moving the markets. But a lot of people are talking about the trade war escalation between the US and China. Both countries identifying $16 billion worth of goods to slap tariffs on, but that is not having an effect on the market. It seems as though the market has priced that in already, my friends. It is Wednesday, August 8th. New sanctions on Russia. The United States penalizes Moscow for the chemical weapons attack on British soil. And Tesla drives into trouble. The question, has it actually violated SEC rules? Former SEC boss Harvey Pitt is going to be answering a few questions with me at this desk in just a few moments. And New York City takes on the ride-sharing explosion. Will the Big Apple limit Uber and Lyft and Via's growth? Via's co-founder and the CEO joins us live now on the show in just a few minutes. Big show today. It's certainly a packed day in terms of news. I'm Zain Asher, coming to you live from here in New York, where I'm in business. Welcome, everybody. I'm Zain Asher. Tonight's breaking news for you. More sanctions are coming for Russia and coming for its economy. In the past hour, the U.S. State Department actually announced that it's going to impose new measures on Moscow over the poisoning of the former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter. They were actually the victims several months ago of a suspected assassination attempt that took place in England using a nerve agent, the nerve agent Novichok specifically. Now, before this announcement, the ruble had actually already fallen to a 2-year low over fears that these new sanctions were indeed coming. I want to bring in Elise Labott, who joins us live now from the State Department. So, Elise, this is interesting. I mean, just the timing of all of this. Obviously, President Trump had that meeting with Vladimir Putin just a few weeks ago and sort of intimated that he wanted better relations with Russia, that he was aiming for some kind of détente. And now these sanctions, just help us make sense of it all.
Well, Zain, I mean, these type of legal determinations take months to determine whether Russia violated this 1991 law on chemical and biological weapons use. Now, when this attack happened in March, Congress had asked the administration to try and determine whether Russia was responsible for using this nerve agent against Sergei Skripal and his daughter. And you know that 2 other people were also kind of affected with residual effects of the Novichok when they came into contact in it in recent months. And so that kind of takes time. The U.S. had already said that it suspected Russia, had already imposed some sanctions against Russian individuals, oligarchs close to Vladimir Putin, and expelled U.S. diplomats, for the totality of Russian bad behavior, including the possible use of that Novichok agent. But now the administration has made this determination. I will say that it did come a few months after Congress had asked for it. After this happened in March, they were supposed to make notification before June. Of course, that was when the summit was coming up, and the House in Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Ed Royce had pushed the administration last month to make this determination, which is why we're seeing it now.
Okay, so the timeline, it didn't just happen sort of a few weeks ago. Obviously, the timeline is longer. But I'm curious about what the Kremlin's response is going to be, because do they really actually have the economic power to really retaliate against something like this?
I think you'll probably see something more in the way of diplomatic retaliation. There's been a lot of tit for tat, expulsion of diplomats. There's nothing they could really do in terms of major impact to the U.S. economy. But there are certainly things that could increase tensions between the 2 countries at a time that President Trump said he wants to improve relations with Russia. And you just saw Senator Rand Paul traveling to Russia for the very same aims.
All right, Elise Labott live for us there. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, so media stocks are actually on the move. Tronc shares closed up about, let's see here, 13%, just a little bit more than 13% on reports that the media giant is actually planning to sell its newspaper business. Tronc actually is going to be reporting earnings tomorrow, our time, so Thursday. At the same time, Sinclair Broadcasting is reportedly in talks to try and save its deal with Tribune Media, even though Trunk and Tribune Media are both descendants of the Tribune empire. So they're actually now completely separate. Brian Stelter is here to literally, my head is spinning because this is so confusing to me. You're here to literally help us make sense of it.
I'll try.
Just walk us through, just this changing media landscape.
Both these stories show us the beleaguered environment for the local news business in the United States. We hear a lot about how the New York Times is doing well, the CNNs of the world are doing well in the Trump age because there's so much interest in all things Trump. But when you get down to the local level, whether you're a newspaper owner or a local TV station owner, things are very difficult, and they're getting worse and worse and worse because Google and Facebook are, of course, taking over advertising and taking away advertising dollars. So what you see here is Trunk, which owns the Chicago Tribune, the Baltimore Sun, some really special local newspapers, looking to get out of the business, looking to sell its operations to a private equity firm. This is according to the company's own newspaper. The Chicago Tribune broke this news a few minutes ago. They're looking to sell. The company's not commenting, but as you mentioned, earnings are tomorrow. I think we'll hear more from the company tomorrow about that. This is a company that laid off half the staff of one of its papers. The New York Daily News, just a few weeks ago, laid off half the staff. That's a sign of how desperate things have become at these local papers, and frankly, how greedy the investors have been trying to suck profits out of these papers while they still can. So we don't know if they'll end up selling, but the report is Trunk looking to sell its papers.
Okay, so just in terms of how sort of Sinclair fits into all of this, there was supposed to be a merger between Sinclair and Tribune Media.
And Tribune, yeah.
Where did things go wrong? It doesn't look like it's likely to happen.
No, this is the day, the merger deadline day where either side can break up. So step back a few years, Tribune owned papers and TV stations. Then they broke up the TV stations, thinking the TV stations were the more valuable asset. Now, that is true, but local TV is struggling in some ways, just like local newspapers. So you had Sinclair come in, try to buy these Tribune stations. Sinclair wants to get even bigger. It wants to become a kind of conservative media empire and take on Fox News. Well, it looked like the Trump FCC was going to bless that. It looked like the regulators were going to clear the way. All of a sudden last month, no. Actually, it's the regulators, the Trump White House regulators, that have put the kibosh on the deal. So as of today, they can break up. They can walk away from each other. Our sources are saying that's likely to happen sometime this week. In other words, Sinclair will walk away, will lose the deal. Tribune will break up with them, and then we'll see if Tribune sells to someone else.
Thank you so much for helping me navigate that.
There you go. Thanks.
Brian Stelter, Live for Us. Appreciate that. Okay, so let's talk about a stock that we've been talking about over the past 24 hours that has made some major breaking news. Tesla. Tesla shares actually dipping at the end of the day, down about 2.5%. This all comes after reports that the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, i.e. the SEC, is actually looking into whether Elon Musk's tweet about taking Tesla private, that tweet that sort of sent Wall Street into a headspin yesterday, whether that tweet in and of itself may have indeed violated the law. The shares, as you can see there, closed down slightly, 2.5%. They're still up nearly 8% from Tuesday morning. That is before Musk actually announced his intentions. I want to go straight now to Harvey Pitt. He's the former chair of the Securities Exchange Commission. He joins us live now. So, Harvey, thank you so much for being with us. You're the perfect person to help us make sense of this. I just want to start with Elon Musk's tweet. The way he announced that he was considering taking Tesla private, a lot of people are saying, well, yes, he said that funding is secured, and of course, he better have been serious about that. He must have funding secured if he's going to say that on Twitter. But just what do you make of how he made the announcement, and what might the SEC be looking into?
It's the way he announced this is highly unprecedented and very problematic. For one thing, he announced it during the market, and most announcements of this sort emanate from the company, not from a CEO's Twitter account. And in addition, they're made before the market opens or after the market closes. It's not so much the medium as the message. He had a very bare-bones statement, and he left out important details. So there are a lot of issues, I think, that regulators will want to nail down before they conclude that he didn't violate any laws.
And, obviously, Elon Musk has sort of made no secret of the fact that he is sometimes very angry with those who have been short selling his stock. After the news that came out yesterday, share price skyrocketed. It was up about 11% at the end of day yesterday. I mean, do they look into all of that as well in terms of if there is any sort of untoward motive for Elon Musk actually conducting business in this way?
I think two principal areas of concern are, first, whether his statements might have been fraudulent, and second, whether they might have been uttered for the purpose of manipulating the market. With respect to fraud, the SEC would have a concern as to whether what he said was true at the time he said it. What is important here is he...
Do you mean in terms of saying that the funding is secured? They have to verify whether or not, at the time that he sent out that tweet yesterday, whether or not he did indeed have funding?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And with respect to manipulation, it is illegal for somebody to make statements designed artificially to influence the price of a stock. His statements yesterday caused an 11% or 10% bump in Tesla's stock price. So one issue will be, why did he make those statements, and why did he make them at the time and in the manner he did?
Okay, so overall, do you think investors should be worried? What are your thoughts on that?
I believe that a lot of this can sort itself out, but I believe his conduct is very irresponsible. He may not want to be a public company, but right now he is in a public company, and that means he has to follow the rules that are applied to all public companies.
So if, and I really want to emphasize the word if, because honestly, I don't know, nobody knows as of yet, but if it is determined that there may have been something in terms of SEC regulations that Elon Musk actually ended up violating, what would be the ramifications of that, do you think?
Yes, they will have to look into it and see whether his conduct in some manner offended a number of rules, and that includes rules relating to companies that are public but want to go private. There's a real issue here about the manner in which he announced this, and it's important to keep in mind that he does not alone have the power to determine whether Tesla will go private. That's for the outside directors and the
shareholders have to vote on it.
Yes.
Right. So we're not even sure what's going to end up happening here. All right, Harvey Pitt, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for breaking that down for us. Appreciate that. So literally, as Harvey and I were just talking about, Elon Musk's plan is certainly not a done deal by any stretch of the imagination. As we just told you, he needs to deal with the SEC as well. He needs a Tesla board, which says it's considering his plan. And Musk also needs, as I mentioned, shareholder approval as well in order to take the company private. Ross Gerber is one of Tesla's most vocal and supportive investors. He told CNN he's not on board with Musk's proposal.
I think he wants to take the company private at 420. I don't think that's going to happen. You know, us shareholders aren't selling. Every shareholder I've talked to doesn't want to sell. And being a private company, I think, lowers the potential return outcome over the long term for Tesla shareholders who are currently public shareholders. So, you know, we're going to fight to you know, make Elon happy, keep the company public, and have this stock be fairly valued, which should be at around $571 a share. You know, we'll be buyers today in the market. If it opens under 420, we're going to buy every share we can, and the short sellers are done.
All right, so to power new technologies like, say, a massive fleet of self-driving Teslas, the world's biggest economies will soon be craving the next generation when it comes to wireless networks. It is 5G I'm talking about, and right now, China. China is racing way ahead of the United States when it comes to 5G. State-owned China Tower made its IPO Wednesday in Hong Kong. It's the biggest stock listing the world has seen in the past 2 years. China Tower is rapidly rolling out 5G across the country. It now has 350,000 5G cell towers. The US, by the way, just by comparison, has a measly 30,000. A study out this week by Deloitte says that China could actually be creating a 5G tsunami, and soon the US might never actually be able to catch up. Here's why that is so significant.
self-driving cars, smart cities, fully connected homes, robots. This is the future, and it will be powered by 5G. The G stands for generation, as in next generation wireless network, and it's going to be fast. About 10 times faster than the 4G network on your phone right now. Today, it takes about 6 minutes to download a 3D movie on 4G. With 5G, it'll be 30 seconds. But 5G is about more than just super fast downloads and fewer dropped calls. It's really about connecting the Internet of Things. All those sensors, thermostats, cars, robots. Right now, 4G just doesn't have the bandwidth for all those devices. But 5G will. That's why it's a game changer. Imagine self-driving cars instantly communicating with traffic lights and other cars. Or a surgeon with VR equipment and special gloves operating remotely on a patient thousands of miles away. 5G will make that possible. But when? 2020 is the working date for most of the wireless industry. 4 nationwide carriers are already testing the technology. Chip makers are building processors and radios for 5G communication, and network equipment companies are building the backbone. But the future won't come cheap. 5G signals are powerful, but they don't reach as far. Making it work will require thousands, maybe even millions of mini cell phone towers pretty much everywhere you can imagine. Every lamppost, the side of every building, maybe even in every room of your home. That's why rolling out 5G to the entire United States could cost $300 billion.
It is no small change. Daniel Ives is Chief Strategy Officer and Head of Technology Research at GBH Insights. Daniel, thank you so much for being with us. So when you compare the US to China racing ahead when it comes to 5G, why is the US lagging behind?
And look, it also speaks to the Qualcomm-Broadcom situation in terms of the national security threat that was deemed within the Beltway. Look, I think part of it is that this is obviously a two-horse race, U.S. and China. I think right now, China is definitely ahead, but I do believe this is something where from a technology and R&D perspective, they've had an advantage, but this is something over the coming years, it's going to be key for the U.S. to really significantly double down on 5G development, and especially domestically in terms of the infrastructure build out, because, as that piece talked about, there's massive ramifications across really all of technology and the consumer ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And I think this is something that from a U.S. tech perspective, it's going to become more and more key over the coming, call it 6 to 12 months.
So I just want to make sure that our international audience really understands the difference between 5G and 4G, just in terms of how society would be different. Obviously, 5G is a lot faster than 4G. We know that. I believe it's, 10 times faster, if not more. But when it comes to our ordinary lives, how would 5G really make everybody's life that much better or different, especially when it comes to things like that piece talked about self-driving cars, it talked about the Internet of Things. What changes?
Well, I think it's really more an interconnected world. I mean, you see in the smart homes, and you see with Amazon, Google, Apple, as well as others really getting into the smart home, interconnected. More and more consumers are going to become interconnected from a smart home to the automobile, to what's happening at work, at home. And 5G is really the infrastructure broadly, because there's chips, telco, software that's going to all be around 5G. But think about it, it's going to make things go a lot quicker, and the capacity of what consumers and enterprises are going to basically have at their table are going to be significantly more than they are today.
Okay, so that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in what sort of new type of apps, what sort of new businesses can really thrive from a 5G platform. Obviously, as we move towards 5G, I assume that you're going to see an explosion in different types of businesses and apps that are going to take advantage. What type should we be looking out for?
One also OTT. I mean, if you think about just broadly defined streaming and what's going on, obviously Netflix has been at the top of the heap. But look at what Disney's done with the Fox acquisition. Look at what's happening across media across the world. You're going to see more and more streaming apps, and the ecosystem today, if you look at 5G and you look at some of the private companies, over the next 3 to 5 years, 5G from an investment perspective, from a VC to private equity, is going to be, along with cybersecurity, probably one of the biggest areas that you're going to see investment dollars in. So I believe 5G, we're really in the early first inning of this playing out. And even though AT&T and Verizon and a lot of others are sort of front and center here in terms of building that out, I think right now it's about U.S. versus China. Who are the winners? who are the companies that win from this?
Ooh, yeah, that's interesting. And just what sort of competitive advantage China's going to have, given that it's so much faster in terms of implementing 5G. Daniel Ives, got to leave it there.
Thanks.
Running out of time, sadly. Thank you so much. And we're going to be actually talking a little bit more about this later on in the show, actually. All right, so after the break, after spending millions of dollars living up to its promises, whew, oh boy, MoviePass has actually changed its business model and they're saying right now that this time they believe they've actually finally gotten it right. And back in the day, Netflix was the only cowboy in town. Now the streaming market is jam-packed. So will Disney's costly new offering soon be the Dragon Slayer? That's next.